two things, one being sexual abuse and then also emotional abuse. And those two things made it very hard for me to maintain relationships. I guess kind of corny, but you have to keep going.
If you want to be rich, that person is inside you. If you want to have a good relationship, that person is inside you. I would like to start by talking directly to the viewer and first of all, saying welcome to your free online coach. And I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this and maybe start out with why it's free. And maybe that way people can get a little bit of our philosophy and who we are and what we're about. So I'm going to start by asking you to go ahead and, Tyler, tell people about yourself. Why are you doing this, and why are you doing it for free?
I just like doing it. I've gone through my own troublesome issues with myself. Some of it brought on to myself, a lot just coming from my past. And I think working through it for me has increased my quality of life quite a bit. And I realized how hard it was for me. And one of the things that helped me the most was hearing people online just talking and me being able to kind of scoop up some of that knowledge and apply it. And so that really just kind of inspired me to just try to do the same.
How do you define the it? What is the it that you are working on?
Right now, it's my stress response. My journey started very narrow. So probably two things, one being sexual abuse and then also emotional abuse. And those two things made it very hard for me to maintain relationships, not just, especially with other people, but really with myself and being secure and having clarity with where I wanted to go with my life. It was like everything that happened in my life was like a trauma response. And so I'd jump off this way, that way, and nothing was cohesive in my life. I finally just kind of got sick of it, and started addressing that. But then right now where I'm at is just a broader strategy, trying to create a broader strategy for myself to just deal with stress responses in general. I think I've dealt mostly with the narrow things in my life, but I'm realizing that those bigger things, those more narrow things in my life have had a trickle down effect that I'm realizing within the last couple of years still has a huge effect on how I deal with stress. So not just in regard to my trauma, but just kind of in regards to everything in my life, and how it all kind of ties back to the same things in that state in childhood where I was constantly in a stress response, and how now as an adult, it's a smaller stress response and it's a much more manageable stress response, but it's still there. And so I'm trying to figure that out for myself, and then also try to share that journey a little bit with other people as I kind of embark on it.
Yeah, I would say the same, except I'm really coming at this more from a professional academic perspective. I started out I studied something called development studies when I was an undergrad, which is really how do a group of people, how do communities develop? How do you get out of poverty? How do you join the kind of the world? We're talking more about countries and communities and tribes. And then, I became a lawyer as I talk about and how much I didn't like it. But then I really focused in as a nonprofit leader on how do we help people as individuals, and then how do we help people collectively. And I've learned so much about, not only stress, trauma, but neuroscience, physiology, and had a lot of really great mentors and teachers. And I've done a lot of academic stuff and been certified in doing all this work. But the bottom line is that, I think a lot of people get into this kind of work because, like you said, you were feeling it, and you're feeling the stress, you're feeling the trauma from childhood. And I'll talk about some of my own stuff from childhood too, as we go along in this series as it comes up. But definitely had as well a lot of trauma as well. And when you recognize it in yourself and you are able to make changes and really get better, I mean, I feel like it's a natural thing to want to share it with other people. And that brings us to the free stuff. Why are you doing this for free? When it's part of our work. It's what we do. I do it from a larger community building nonprofit world perspective. You do it on your own as a business. So why are you doing this for free?
Well, I guess if I'm just to be just blunt, sometimes there's just no money in it. So, sometimes there's great opportunities. Sometimes you get to work with different people, and sometimes people do have, or they do want to pay for different services and stuff, and that's all great. But I think the majority of the work, and that's kind of why nonprofits exist, because sometimes there is no economic incentive to do the work sometimes, just because there's just not, and that doesn't mean I feel like that doesn't mean the work shouldn't be done still.
Well, right. Except there is profit in it if you do it for like big companies and CEOs. I'm sorry. If you do it for big companies and CEOs and I'm on YouTube a lot, and Tony Robbins is basically a coach. And if people haven't heard of Tony Robbins, go look him up. He's like the 7 foot tall guy, really deep voice, and he does these like big things where people come out and there's like 1,000 people in an auditorium, 10,000 people in an auditorium, I don't know, and they walk across fire, and they pay a lot of money, and he promises like transformation at the end. And I don't know if people are transformed or not. I'm assuming that they are because they love him. He's been around since like the 90s doing this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, for me, there are two things that make me want to do it for free. One is that I got into this work because I wanted to work with the communities that I really loved. And, as a lawyer, I was doing environmental justice. So I was working with communities. And so I just find that, people who live in public housing and who are really struggling, they're the kindest, most interesting, and they are the most resilient people because they have to absorb all these blows that come at them. Everything from we're going to build a power plant in your neighborhood to you're going to be racially discriminated against, for generations, and nobody cares, right? And so that there's like a sense of injustice in me that makes me mad and makes me want to do something. And like you said, how unfair is it to go to the people that have the most to gain from the information that you have, and then tell them you have to pay for it? Like, that's insane. But I think the other thing for me is I'm just really, I'm kind of over capitalism in a lot of ways. And this is not political. This is just about systems and how they work. And I think capitalism works in a big, grand way to make, big, big companies happen and things like that. But I don't think it works on a one-to-one thing when we're talking about stuff that you shouldn't have to pay money for. Your health, your well-being, to live in a world where there's justice and kindness shouldn't be something that some people get to pay for and have and other people don't. So I just have this kind of like, angry girl in me going, no way. I don't know. It just gets me. So yeah, that's what we're here for. Do you have like a philosophy of how you do coaching, or like the way you present yourself?
No, no philosophy. Maybe other than a common theme is you just have to. I guess kind of corny, but you have to keep going.
Yeah.
There will always be another thread to pull. There will always be another spark. There will always be a point of motivation or something that keeps you going. And there are periods in between those that it just feels like you want to stop or it might be worthless. And my only philosophy, especially when working with people, maybe one on one, is that we just have to come to the table and lay the problems out. We just have to come and talk. We just have to come and get an understanding of what's going on, and we'll find the solutions. We just have to keep the process going and keep that dialogue open. And I think part of the same philosophy in the content too, even though it's maybe someone talking to a camera or us talking to each other, just keeping the dialogue going so people can jump in, listen to what they want to. And then and another reason why I started doing this for free is because that's how I started when I was, 19, 20, 21. Like, I didn't have any money, and I had way more problems than I have now.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't for people just coming on and saying what they felt and telling their experiences, I would have been left in the dark because I didn't have anybody in my immediate circle or community that had that sort of knowledge. or had the emotional maturity to talk to someone who was less emotionally mature. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, when I was really struggling in my 20s and into my 30s, I didn't, I mean, there wasn't YouTube. This is like 80s and 90s is when I was really like confused. And I didn't have, there was nowhere to go. It wasn't like, I did do a little bit of like therapy, but and nothing gets therapy. I think therapy is really important. And I will say this right now. If anything that we say or talk about feels like very tender and scary to touch, you should go and talk to a therapist because they can kind of get to some of the really painful things. And you need that one-on-one support. If you're going to walk through something really painful. And so anyway, that therapy is good, but it didn't work for me. It didn't help me. What helped me was reading books and music. Or one thing I did listen to a lot was there's this woman named Joyce Myers who's a religious person. I don't follow her anymore because I think she's gone MAGA, but unfortunately, but she was very good at taking religious scripture and then applying it to like being very archetypal and then saying this is an example of how we walk through life. So I'll give you an example. So if anyone knows about the story of, and let me just say I'm not religious, so this isn't about religion, but she would tell the story of the Jews escaping from Egypt, right? So if anyone knows the Bible, it's the Old Testament. The Jews are escaping from Egypt and they go into the desert and they wander the desert for 40 years. It's a very famous story, right? And at some point they get upset and they tell God, why did you send us out here? You were supposed to free us from slavery because they were slaves at the time. And then they look up at the sky and they get manna from heaven. So that's like these these cakes that fall from the sky, and they eat them and then they need water. So there's this whole thing and they wander around for 40 years and it's just a desert. Like they should have gotten out of it. And so she uses that as a metaphor for how we get lost in our emotions, in our past, in our trauma. And she, in particular, she was abused, essayed by her father repeatedly when she was a child. So she came to the reading of the Bible and looking for archetypes, looking for analogies and stories and allegories that can help her understand herself. And then finding that kind of inner voice that she calls God, and other people could call it something else, that helped to guide her. And I found that very, very helpful for me to kind of find that the inner wisdom, you know. And so that if we want to talk about like philosophy, for me, it is that I truly believe that inside everybody is the strength and the wisdom. Like, all the things that you want are held inside of you. All the good things are inside of you, but you have to dig through and uncover them because they're going to be layered over with all kinds of stuff that's, no, you can't do that. You're not good enough. Nobody in your family has ever done that. You can't have that. There's not enough in the world. All of those kinds of things. You should be ashamed or you should feel guilty or whatever. All of these terrible feelings that we carry around that really get created from childhood trauma, but other things too, which we can talk about. There are a lot of things that make us present ourselves in the world like we are like land on Earth, and immediately we've got our body, our evolution. I talk about this all the time. Our nervous system, our evolutionary development, our genetics, our our childhood, and then the systems around us that can oppress people and suppress people and then give other people all the benefits in life, right? So these are all things that we land on Earth already embedded in who we are and what's going on. So uncovering those things helps to reveal who we really are. And that to me, if you want to start, like, the first place to start for anybody who's listening is start to understand what are your values, because that's going to be your guide. And that's hard. A lot of people don't know what their values are. What do you care about?
How do you how do you start to figure out what your values are? Maybe out. Is there a way to do it outside of like what you come into? So your family, your community, what you see on TV.
It's hard. You can be very inculcated, is the word, where you just, your family has told you, your parents have told you, your church has told you, your society has told you, all of these things, that this is who you are. These are the things you should care about. And that's why sometimes doing this kind of work can be really scary for the people in your life, because it means you're going to reject maybe some of the things that they taught. Um, but there, one of the reasons I thought of this is we wanted to use the quizzes at Talent Transformation, and they do have a quiz that we'll put in the description where you can start to. It'll ask you questions, and then you can start to, identify what things are important to you, and then at the end you should have a list of values. And maybe we could try it, but maybe we could try to do it online together or something. But the way that I have identified my own values is the things that make me, like I was talking about, like, it just like capitalism bothers me kind of thing, because I don't like the injustice of it. So I care about justice, that there should be, you know, if people should be held accountable, and I should be held accountable, and there, the world should be a place where things balance out, and not that, the bad guys always win, or money always is more important than love, or, all of that, the stuff that that we deal with on this earth.
Is there a difference between values, let's say maybe principles, and then something like culture? It seems like maybe they can all be tied up, but I'm just thinking. So in the West, in the United States, we're very individualistic. We have capitalism. Everybody, we have the family. The family unit is somewhat fragmented in the sense that, well, it kind of focuses on the individual. So you have the parents, and then you have the kid. The kid goes off. Whereas in other countries, it's more we all kind of stick together. There's a more communal aspect to it. And I'm wondering, is either one of those wrong? Is it just a question of different countries or different families, different states, even valuing different things? And at a wide scale, it becomes culture, and then maybe is principles something more like values being a bit more broader and principles being a bit more strategic and nuanced? Like, what is your how do what does the landscape look like to you? How does someone kind of just get plopped down and start to navigate the differences?
So there's a really interesting researcher, and I think she's at Stanford, and she's done a lot of studies on culture. And cultures are either open, or they're tight, or they're loose, I think is how she puts it. And so a tight culture would be one where there's a lot of police, there's a lot of oversight on things, there's a way you do things in this culture. You don't find a lot of people being overweight or alcoholics in these cultures. So like I used to live in Switzerland, for example. People are not overweight, and if you are drunk in public, if you're even a little tipsy in public, it's a problem. There is a very strict society there about order. And everything's super clean. Like you get on the train or the bus or whatever, it's clean. The streets are clean. And then there's cultures where things are much more loose and, open, and, being different is okay. And, being a gay person, for example, or being, a woman who decides she doesn't want to have kids or whatever is okay. And so there are different levels of that. And then there are countries like our country that's very mixed in terms of that kind of structure. And what it comes down to, which is fascinating to me, is that the countries that tend to be tighter or the states, if you're going to talk about the United States, because there's some states where there's much more restriction on who you are and how you behave, and some where it's much looser, like California, New York, it's much looser than it would be in like, Mississippi or Alabama, for example. And the bottom line is that she has identified is that where it's tighter and more strict is where people feel more threatened. They don't feel as safe. So they come up with these ways to protect themselves with lots of rules. Places where they feel more safe, there's a loosening up. So California, New York feel very powerful and safe, financially, for example, or just how large or how much a population or just how arrogant, we might be about, hey, we can do whatever we want to. We're California, New York. So, but does that mean that the values are held in these places? And so that's the difference, I would say, with principles, which is, in our state or in our country, we don't allow people to, not, marry a person who's their same sex, for example, or we don't allow people to, not be kind of churchgoers or, whatever it is. That's a norm. That's a cultural norm, which means it's just the normal way of being there, and that you can say that's your principle, but that's not getting to that thing that we're talking about, which is where is that powerful person inside you that is able to say, this is who I am, and I don't think, as a coach, what you're trying to do is help that person find that thing, because if you find that thing inside you, you're going to actually know what you truly want. How many people have come to you and said, I really want to be rich, for example. And you've been like, well, wait a minute.
There's a couple steps to take before we get to that one.
And it may be that the being the rich maybe isn't the thing that they want. What they really want is respect, right? Or they want freedom, or they want, they love opulence. They want to live in glamour, and none of those things actually require you to be rich, but they have made rich the thing that they're after, even though they're after something even deeper than that.
Yeah. They replace, it's almost like some people replace what the actual value is with something with like a middleman that they think can get them to what their values are. So yeah. I can get to freedom with money, but you can also get to freedom with discipline. You can also get to freedom with consistency. You can also get to freedom with honesty. You can take any number of routes, and maybe, you want a few of them too. But I think oftentimes, especially when we get stressed or overwhelmed, we want to cling to the thing, one, that we see that's in front of our eyes, but two, that feels like the easiest to like conceptually understand, and there's a tangible road to get there instead of kind of working from it from an internal perspective.
Yeah. Well, and wouldn't you say those two things are the things that people want the most? They want money and they want relationship, right? And sometimes they want, they mix up the two. And I would say with relationship, it's really similar too, that people will say, I really want to find, my true love and my soulmate and all that. But what they really want is self-acceptance. They want someone else to accept them for who they are, or they want companionship that they can count on because people have not been there for them. So they want to be able to tie somebody down that won't ever leave them. There's lots of motivations around wanting that relationship that isn't really about the relationship with that person. It's about having a feeling inside about themselves. And the freedom that comes from understanding that is really, really at the basis of what we all want, that we can have the freedom to be ourselves, to want what we want, and then be able to get it, not because we're chasing the wrong thing, but because we're actually chasing the thing that will really satisfy it. And it's much easier to satisfy the need for freedom than it is the need for $1 million. Because if you want freedom, you can get in your van and drive to the middle, of the desert somewhere and set yourself up and live like a nomad, and there's a lot of freedom in that. And you don't need a lot of money, Same thing with relationships. If you really just want to be seen for who you are, then you need to uncover and allow yourself and love yourself enough to see yourself so that you could show it to other people. And that's going to get you the love. That's where the charisma comes from and the attractiveness and all of that. And then you attract who is right for you and meeting you at your level. Have you ever noticed that, like, when you're searching for a relationship, that you attract somebody who is kind of like you at that moment, and maybe just as effed up as you are in that moment?
And I think it can only really be that way because it not to say if you were better, like you're worse than somebody, but if you were a more improved, I'll say, version of yourself, you would probably attract a more improved version of somebody else, because at that you would look at somebody else and realize, okay, well, they have a little bit of work to do, and I don't really want to kind of, not that this sounds messed up, but I don't want to backtrack. And
Right.
so you attract someone kind of on your same level, and you can kind of work through those things together. Oh, I don't know. What do you think? I know that sounds kind of messed up, but
No,
I think that's realistic.
it's just, I mean, I can only talk about my experience. And when wherever I was, I can see it now looking back, over the years and seeing the different relationships that I had. And every relationship, I can see now that the man I was with, or the young guy that I was with before they were men, they reflected where I was. So if I was, partying a lot, I met a partier who was like me and maybe worse. If I was, uncertain about whether I wanted to, or I thought I wanted to be in a relationship and I wanted to get tied down and get married and have kids, then I met someone who wanted that too, but was underneath very ambiguous, as was I. And I didn't realize it at the time that I was very ambiguous about, because I was, like, I was in school and I was almost about to be a lawyer. And that's like, all of a sudden I was going to get married and I got pregnant, and it's like, wow, yeah. And then I didn't have the baby because I had a miscarriage. And then the whole thing fell apart because he actually was not ready to, and he's now, my age is like 60, and he's never had kids, and he's been married, but he's been married and divorced like a couple of times. So, and then as I got older, I was not able to commit because I wasn't sure who I was and what I really wanted. And I was also worried because I couldn't have kids because I kept having miscarriages. And sure enough, I was with somebody who was completely unable to commit. So I didn't realize at the time, I thought they were blocking me from the things that I wanted, and realize now, no, I just met myself. I just met myself in the mirror. And I don't know that happens for everybody, but I can only talk about my own experience.
Well, it kind of. I talk to a lot of people who will go through a phase. They'll go through a breakup, or they'll go through a divorce, and go through this phase of, or they might be like right on the brink of it, and they'll think to themselves that, okay, like, I have to break up, or I have to get divorced, or I have to have this isolation time, because there's this phrase, like, I need to work on me, like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to focus on me. I need to go through my me period or something like that. And what you kind of just said, like, any breakup that I have, it was less of me breaking up with somebody and really just me breaking up with myself. It's like, because I can't see my way out of this. And then it's like you project it onto somebody else. And it's like, well, if I can't solve it for me, it's easier for me to see it in you. And so I'll just break up with you, only to then be in a period where I still have to deal with every little thing just alone now. And in some cases, you really do have to break up with somebody because it really just isn't a good situation. You're not going to do the progress with them. But I have noticed that even in my relationship, everything that I feel like she needs to work on is really something I need to work on.
Mm.
And when I then turn the focus from her, or like blame, or like, just like, you need to fix that. And I'm like, well, what about what I'm seeing in her can I fix about myself? And then when I just focus on that, it's like, okay, well, I can actually do that. I can actually have control over that. And it seems like every time I do that, it's I get into this space where almost now she's receptive to whatever I was trying to see her, almost because I'm now setting an example in my relationship that this is my stand. Not, oh God, that sounds bad, but like, this is my standard. This is what
Yeah.
I'm up to. This is
Yeah.
nothing on you. I'm just focusing on where I want to go. And then she sees that and she's like, oh, like, actually that seems pretty good. You seem
Mm-hmm.
very mature for trying to do that. And there's been on the flip side, there's been countless situations where she's done the same, where she's tried to tell me something. She was right. I wouldn't listen. And then she set the example and stopped kind of feeding into my bullshit. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh wow, look at her. Like that seems nice. Like that seems very mature. I kind of want to be a bit more like that. And then, but it never works for me at least. It's never worked when I try to fix the problem from the outside in. They're like, okay, if I fix it outside, then it'll be fixed. It's never really that way.
Right. You've got to have that back and forth. That's called mirroring, but it's a very sophisticated thing that you're doing. So let me kind of give a little bit of foundation here. So there is a principle in or theory. I don't know. I think it's pretty well proven in child development. So when you have a baby and you have young kids, right? And so you're holding your baby in a healthy relationship, and not all of us got this. So it's harmful. It hurts if you don't have it, but you can get over it. But a lot of us didn't have this. It's called serve and return. So you're a baby and you're being held in your mother's arms or your father's arms, and you go goo goo gaga, and the mother or the dad goes goo goo gaga, and that's a very simplistic form of mirroring or serve and return. You do something, they do something back. Now, as we get older and much more intelligent and sophisticated and all that, what you're doing is a high level of serve and return, where you're recognizing, you're seeing yourself in your wife's behavior, or that is annoying you, is annoying you, and she's doing the same to you. And instead of taking that discomfort out and putting it on them, you're saying, this is my discomfort that I'm going to work through. And by working through it, she's going to see herself and see the things that she needs to address as well. And that's that kind of beautiful relationship that you want to have, where you're kind of constantly mirroring each other, and you can do that with your kids. You can do that with your loved ones. You can do it with people that you meet at work. But there's something I thought of that I think is really, really important for somebody who might be going through a breakup and feeling really bad, about the breakup. And I know there's kind of nothing worse. It's a terrible pain to go through a breakup, whether it's your decision or not. But to realize that, like you said, you're breaking up with yourself. You're breaking up with a part of you that wanted something that didn't work, or that was a certain way, and you may not be over it. You may still be wanting to be that way, and, just a scenario might be, and I'll take my own example where, I want to have, I'm in my 30s and I want to, nail this down and get married and, have a husband and do all that kind of stuff so I can just get on with my life. I mean, that's kind of how I thought of it. And so and like I said, I met somebody who was completely unable to commit to anything, and told me when we first met that, I'm divorced. I divorced my wife because she wanted to have kids and I didn't want to have kids. And then I thought, well, I could change that. I mean, it's just silly. So what I'm saying to people is, when you realize that that's not going to work, if you realize this is about me, not about them rejecting me, this is about me not being my true self. And all they've done is shown me what does not work for me. Right. And hopefully that takes that feeling of utter rejection away and turns it into something that you can work with. Okay. Now I got like some Play-Doh in my hands, and I can see what I can make with this. This is not about rejection of you. This is about me figuring out. It's not rejection of me. It's about me figuring out who I really am and loving that part of myself.
I think my wife and I got kind of lucky with our personalities. I've never been in obviously I've never been in a relationship that worked aside from her, but now that I'm looking back on it, when I'm trying to, let's say, better myself or focus on something for myself, she does not actively try to get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I can't overstate that enough. And I'm not the type of person, if she's working on herself, if she's withdrawing or she's going through her own thing, I'm not the type of person to try to throw a wrench in that, because ultimately, if she gets better, I get better, like the relationships gets better, the kids benefit from that. But maybe it was my own maturity, but in the past, I could not let somebody be. So if I saw something that I thought was wrong, like I couldn't let it go. We had to
Give me an
talk about it.
example.
Like an easy one, sad, really sad, but like, why are you not texting me back? Why can we not talk about this right now? It's like, okay, like you have work, you have school, you have this, you have that, but like, isn't our relationship important enough for us to figure this out like right now?
Hmm.
And like vice versa, like if they had a problem with whatever I was doing, like I would just withdraw and avoid and kind of throw up smoke screens and not really want to address it and be like, no, that's really your problem.
Hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why our marriage has worked is because we knew each other in high school and we kind of re-met and got married pretty quick. And I think that actually helped because almost the severity of the commitment that we made it like, okay, we got at a very early stage in our relationship. It was like all the pressure is on us to figure this out right now.
Mm.
And I'm not sure I'd recommend it because it was super stressful. And definitely that's why I think it was part luck that we just kind of matched in that way. We're both the type of person to not really let something go, but also be able to let things go when we need to in a way. Like we're not going to let the relationship go, but for this battle or for this thing or for this ego oriented dispute I'm having with myself, really, that I'm trying to project onto you, like I can let that go for today.
Right.
Um, because if we don't, well, we just got married, we just told our parents, like we have a kid, like we're just going to look so stupid if we don't figure this shit out. And I know that's a horrible like social pressure, but the social pressure and just the embarrassment of not trying to get it to work, like when because we were already young, we were
So
already
how
kind of
old were you when
naive.
you, how old, like, walk me through the timeline. So you knew each other in high school.
We knew each other in high school, and then I think we re-met when we had to be like 20. She's a year older, so I was maybe 21, 22, and then we got married like that same year.
Wow.
And so
And then
yeah,
you
we
had,
just
when was your first child born? So that was what, 22. So you're like 26, 25, 26. Because
so
Mason's 4, right?
he's 3.5. So we got pregnant maybe 6 months after I proposed, and then we probably got our marriage was maybe a month or two after that. And by that time we got married, and almost like a month or two later we moved in with my parents because we were like
Yeah.
because we were like in this headspace. We're like, we're going to get married. Okay, well, we need a house. Well, if we need a house, we need to save for a house, so let's move in with our parents. And I don't know, we were trying, it was almost like we were trying to play house. We were trying to play
Mm.
married couple and do everything that we thought we needed to do.
Hmm.
um, and it just went so fast, and it was really stressful, but like just like that young and kind of dumb and trying to like abide by social pressure almost forced us into making it work until we finally kind of stabilized it. And I think only now are we really kind of in the space of, okay, what do we really want? Like what is really us? How do we really deal with things? Not just what would our parents think or what would society think, or it's just like, okay, it's actually just us now.
Right.
We're kind of out of the fire a little bit, so let's reassess and really like figure out what we want out of life. And that was a whole transition in itself. But I mean, it's going really well because we had all those trials and tribulations, let's say, and like we still have them, but having so many up front and having to get through every single one, I think the beginning of the relationship has was the hardest, and it's only gotten easier.
Nice.
And for us, that's been, I think it's been a blessing almost, because it's just like when you're going through something hard, we didn't exactly know how hard it was, but like looking back, we can be like, oh, like shit, like let's not do that again.
Yeah.
And so like we got to almost deal with most of the hard stuff up front, and now we can more consciously choose the things that we're going to do and how we go about arguments and how we kind of we live, but with the benefit of all that upfront difficult experience.
Well, one thing that you're really highlighting that I think is so important for people to hear is that, we tend to think that everything is about us. Like we make it or break it. And, like I said, there's a lot of things that are out there that influence us in so many ways that we don't have a lot of control over. And in some countries, for example, you just have an arranged marriage and there is no, I mean, that's my dad's tradition, from India. You get married and you don't your parents tell you who to marry, and then you don't get divorced if you don't like the person. Tough shit, right? And you learn to love them, which is and it does. I mean, I've seen so many older married couples from arranged marriages, and 9 times out of 10, they're completely devoted to each other after all the things that they go through in the years. So there's social structures, and like you said, you got married and you knew you had to figure it out. And figuring it out isn't always about you being the brilliant person that you are, although obviously you put a lot of time and thinking and effort into it. But a lot of things can influence whether something works or not. And I think it's just important so that people don't think that everything is my fault and I should have been able to fix everything. No, you can't. You can't fix everything. You can't make everything work. So just wanted to say that. And I'm wondering if we should take I don't know, I haven't taken it, but there's a values quiz on the talent transformation. And I thought maybe we could go there, pull it up and see if we can take it, and then put the link in the description if people want to take it with us, or they just want to watch us take it, or they want to take it on their own. It's completely free. And I'm just curious, because I really do think that's where you start. If you want to start with coaching, this is where I would start. My sister-in-law is like one of those like really high level expensive corporate coaches, and that's her big thing. She does this thing where you just like a wall of values, like honesty and patience and love and value and harmony and and then you kind of circle them and then you come up with them. But I want to try this quiz. So what do you think? You want to like pull it up? We can put it on the screen and do it together and then see what happens.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. So you get a helpful quizzes. Life status. Personal values quiz. Here we go. Start quiz. You want to do your own?
Yeah, what if I can open it up and maybe we can both go through it and then...
Yeah, that's a great idea. So let's do it together. Like you do yours, I'll do mine, and we'll do it at the same time, then we'll flip the page at the same time. Okay. So first question should be, I like to celebrate personal success.
I somewhat agree.
Okay. Your report is being processed. You should be redirected in seconds. I'll let you share first and then you get your mind.
Okay. So this personalized guidance will help you understand your values within the following framework.
It's kind of pretty how they put it all together. It's kind of nice. So the following graphic shows, so it looks like achievement, conservation, respect, and freedom are big. Tradition, equality and justice, enjoyment and stability, and caring are not so big. That's interesting. Do you feel like that's true?
Yes and no. I like achievement for the sake of filling my time productively. Mm-hmm. I enjoy working on things and I enjoy seeing progress. But it's not that I don't enjoy others' success, but I also don't enjoy my success, if that makes sense. It's like I value productivity and efficiency. Mm-hmm. I don't value celebrating it.
Yeah.
Whether that's for me or for somebody else, because I tend to feel like it's just something that should be done.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So caring is number 2.
Your responses indicate you like to celebrate the joys of others. You prefer to work for the benefit of the others. You feel inspired in an environment that encourages mentoring. You feel less motivated when you have to spend time away from your family and friends. You do not like to disregard or harm others as part of your work. Yeah, well, yeah, that's pretty true.
That sounds like you.
Conservation. I feel like that's not an obvious one that I would have thought would be on a quiz like this. So that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about, like, do you care about the environment, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think why hurt something when you can help it?
Well, yeah, it is our home. It's like, do you want to destroy your home? Or
I can see where that might be super relevant. So like if you work like in retail, or I'm thinking like you work at a Starbucks and you have to see all the waste and you have to see the behind the scenes of how bigger businesses work, you're probably not going to be a great fit. The enjoyment, your responses indicate that you like to celebrate uniqueness, fun, and excitement. That's not particularly true. You prefer to work in a fun field. No, I don't. um, I like new things in the sense that I like challenges.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
growth happens when you're challenged, frankly.
let's see, equality and justice. You like to celebrate inclusion, fairness, and harmony. You prefer to listen to others and also like being heard. You feel inspired to be in an environment that values harmony and it's inclusive and fair. I do to the point that it starts to become counterproductive. And so do
Mm.
whatever you want, but if we have a shared goal and it's becoming and that goes for myself too.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm all for equality, but there needs to be some guardrails because
Let's
people
see.
can be a-holes.
Your responses indicate you value celebrating your freedom, independence, and autonomy more than anything else.
Mm.
You enjoy work when your views or values are respected. I mean, I think who doesn't?
Yeah, who
Um,
doesn't, right?
but I'm not bothered if there is a lack of respect or a difference because that just opens up a great area to grow and understand each other.
Hmm.
Okay, and stability. Stability is aligned with values such as orderliness, belonging, and responsibility. Your responses indicate that you like to celebrate order, responsibility, and belonging.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. You got to rock the boat to steady it again. Yeah, sometimes. All right, let me do mine. Let's see. We got the same exact thing. That's crazy. Achievement, caring, conservation, enjoyment, equality and justice, freedom, respect, stability, and tradition. Maybe there's a couple that are a little bit different, but so my equality and justice is the biggest. That actually should be at the top because it's the biggest one. Maybe they put them all down like this, and then you. No, that is crazy. It's exactly the same. Look at that.
No, it can't be. Oh, so maybe what it is the quiz gives you that chart, but then
Oh,
all
I
these
see.
sections
Right.
explain it.
Okay, caring. Okay, so my biggest is actually equality and justice. So this is just how they lay it out. Oh, it's. I think
Okay.
it's alphabetized. That's why.
Okay.
Okay, so mine are equality and justice is the most important. The second seems to be conservation, which is I'm a
It makes
former
sense.
environmental lawyer. It makes sense. And then I think achievement, and then freedom, and then respect, and then get out of the way. Enjoyment, stability, and then like you, I think tradition is not that big of a deal for me.
So, I guess how do you think of this? Maybe for like your biggest ones and your smallest ones, why do you think the you ended up that way?
I think that I think equality and justice. It's definitely from a work perspective. I think these are good from a work perspective. They're not really I would say aligned with my personal, like how I live my life. Yeah, these are great in terms of work. I want to be thinking about the environment, and the work that I do is about seeking equality and justice by addressing trauma so that people kind of start at the same place in life, or get a chance to get ahead in life despite their traumas. So I think these are good from a work perspective. From a personal perspective, not so much. I think my big drivers personally are things like relationship building and personal growth. Understanding myself, taking what I learn and sharing it and teaching it, learning from others. I'm constantly listening and reading and things like that. Curiosity about the world. I think those are more personal values. And so maybe what we could do is find some more personal values, like the list that I told you my sister-in-law has. Where so what you do is and you can find them anywhere. They're like online. They're just like a list of stuff that just has a bunch of words. and you read through, and then you, like, when you feel like a little kick in your gut over that word, then you circle it, and and then you narrow it down. So let's say you start with 10, then you narrow it down to 5, and then you narrow it down to 3, and it comes down to things like, love and relationships, truth seeking, always growing and learning. I think those are the 3 things that are the most important to me from a personal level. So I think that quiz is good if you're, in a work situation, you want to know what's going to be fulfilling for you in work, but I don't feel like it touches on that personal stuff. So maybe we can share, I'll share like a values list. Like I said, they're everywhere. I think you can find a PDF that we can put in the description and people can start playing around with that.
Okay. I can definitely see the value in that from like an employer's perspective.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, there's a work you and there's a personal you, and they should be talking to each other, but they often are doing different things. I'm not going to work to relationship build and, love everybody at work. I mean, I love people at work, but I don't love them. You know what I mean? Like, right. And you can then, develop friendships and things like that happen from work, but, you're going to work to actually do something, accomplish something. So achievement is important at work. Right. So from that, achievement and caring being up at the top, I think are really very much how I would look at my work self. So let's talk about, I will say that, I want to say that I think there's 3 steps to what we're doing. One is, entertainment, trying to entertain people as we're going through this, learning process, giving people really good information, and then giving them opportunities to begin to transform themselves. So what can you, as we're starting out this, my free online coach, your free online coach, is that how can we start people on that road to transformation? What would be your first kind of step? If they were your client, that they were coming to you for the first time, what would be the first thing you would say? Okay, go and do this so that when we come back, we can go to the next step.
Funny enough, I try not to. No, well, there's a difference. Usually later, if I'm working with someone down the road, we'll have like some specific things that person, okay, by next week, we should have this done. Or by next week, you need to think about this a little bit. But first time, I don't want to overwhelm anybody. Mm-hmm. Like we have a conversation, we say a few things, we get something off of our chest, and like, that's good enough. I want you to leave with the feeling like you're a little bit lighter. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to feel like, now this is sort of marketing as well, but like, I don't want you to feel like there's any work to do just yet. Yeah. Like you already know there's some work to do. So that's why we're here. But, first experience, like, let me leave you with a feeling like this is, the work is probably easier than you thought if you allow yourself to go through it. And it's so much easier if you just have somebody there doing it with you. And so all you have to do is show up. Pay attention to the things that are kind of nagging at you in your head or in your gut, your heart. Like, pay attention to those things, maybe write them down throughout the week, and come back next week. And we'll just dive into it again.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would say exactly the same thing. And I would say, during the week, think about what you really, really want. Spend some time really digging into what really, really makes you feel great about your life. If you could find that thing in you, and then come back, because it's not about homework. It's about feeling good after you're done, so that you feel like you want to keep going, having and enjoying yourself. So that sounds good.
Okay.